Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tai'Shar Manethrin, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Will.
I'm Sam.
And I'm excited to be continuing on in the fires of... that's right, yeah. Sorry, I was like, what book are we on?
They do start to run together a little bit.
Yeah, this is the point at which they do start to the titles especially don't have a whole lot to do with what...
Literally, like, if before we embarked on this whole podcast, if someone asked me to name the titles out of the books, I 100% would have forgotten The Fires of Heaven. 100%. Because the title doesn't really seem to be that pertinent.
No, not to the plot anyway.
Right,
I mean,
they should have been like... The Circus of Heaven or something. Then I would have known.
Yeah. So anyway, we're in the Fires of Heaven, chapter 22. So it starts with the Matt perspective. He's being massaged by his Aiel friend with benefits, Sindra, who insists that she is not the daughter of the Nine Moons. Right. He keeps asking.
And are you sure?
Matt thinks to himself that he's no bloody hero and he wants nothing more than a place to throw dice and meet a nice girl or three.
Right.
Which, at this point, I realized, fans of How I Met Your Mother, that he is Barney Stinson. Like...
Yeah.
Like, he's got a gambling problem, and he likes the ladies. And, And also, Barney Harris is playing him in the show, so it's all connected, man.
Right. Not to be confused with Neil Patrick Harris.
I just want to say, you compare this scene, like the way this scene is written to like similar intimate scenes in something like Game of Thrones, and you would get a lot more graphic detail because it's just a massage, as all that's described. Although, it's referred to later that they were not clothed. Their bodies are never described. You don't have references to any intimate parts of their bodies or anything like that. That's what leads me to believe, this is really a little bit of a side note.
Sure.
When people are talking about like the rating and everything. Well, okay, a character can be unclothed in a scene without having full frontal nudity. And that's, the description tends to be less about the way they actually look and more just, hey, they were nude. And so you can still have them unclothed in the scene without like showing a whole bunch of stuff and maintaining something that is still accurate to the book while not going into like Game of Thrones level of graphic detail. Anyway, that's just something that when you see scenes like this and it just kind of really, you don't read it fully, you could miss the fact that they're not even wearing clothes in this scene.
Absolutely.
Seems like there's something that we haven't had in a while, and you know what that is, Sam?
Dark Friend or
Trollic Attack.
Yes. I said Dark Friend, but sudden Trollic Attack.
Sudden Trollic and Dark Friend.
We had a sudden Dark Hound attack, but no sudden Trollic attack.
Yeah, sudden Trollic and Dark Friend attack. And we get an awesome description of Matt fighting a Murdral with his...
one-on-one. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Ashandarai or Ashandarai. Unlike the sword battles, we actually get a description of the movements of the weapon.
Right.
With the sword battles, it's cool because you get the whole, wind over the mountain or mist of the butterfly or whatever it is. I feel like all the sword forms could be alcoholic drinks.
Yes, absolutely.
It describes like him slicing at his calf muscle and then like going to, this and that and all this. And it just sounds like he really tears them up in one fluid kind of motion is almost what it sounds like. This part especially, it says at one point their two blades meet and blue sparks fly.
Right. That's pretty cool. Like two power wrought blades, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kind of the unstoppable force in the immovable object. So eventually the attack is put down and Matt wonders why they attacked. Though at this point there have been so many sudden Trollic attacks. I don't know why.
Surprise, dude. Like this is what happens to you. Like
I don't know why this one is like, why did they do that this time?
Right. Why'd they bother?
Why he would expect their motivation to be different than other times. But maybe he just thought that the camp location would make for a good Starbucks location and they were trying to bring the property value down by having a bloody battle so they could afford to develop the area. That's the only thing.
Now I'm just picturing Trollocs working at Starbucks and it makes me happy.
Exactly. I would so visit that store. I haven't been to a Starbucks in years, but I'm a bit of a hipster when it comes to like coffee shops these days. I like to go to.
I've picked it back up. I'm not gonna lie. It's just I don't know. It's just so convenient. It's like McDonald's, it's there. It's convenient.
Then we swap to Rand's perspective during the last bit of the battle. Avienda throws a fireball at him.
Right. He's like, what the heck?
He like dodges it, and he's angry until he realizes that there's a flaming Drakkar behind him.
Yep.
And also, I think flaming Drakkar would make a great Wheel of Time themed metal band.
Absolutely. And also would smell just awful.
Yeah, it would. He apologizes to Aviendha, and the Wise Ones stop by to check on them before jumping into the fray elsewhere. Then Moraine stops by to check on them. Then the maidens stop by and say they have tow because they didn't immediately come to his tent rather than fighting the Trollocs and the Dark Friends. Rand tells them to get back to guarding his tent. Rand goes to Asmodean, who says this is Samael's doing. He's like, and you didn't expect me to fight, did you? I mean, because, I mean, really, if I'd been channeling
going on, and
yeah, it would have been bad. But yeah, he explains it's Samael that did it, and he thinks Samael's trying to goad Rand into confrontation, and so he clearly thinks Samael thinks that he can beat Rand in a face-off at this point. So he's pretty arrogant in that.
You would think that would start to change the more of these Forsaken who drop like flies.
Right, exactly. But no, it's like the whole when there's 1,000 different ninja henchmen have all fought Steven Seagal. It's like this. What's the motivation of like the 1,001st?
Yeah,
that is like, you know what? All these other guys can do it, but me. I don't know. There's something just special about me. He must be a millennial.
I ate my Wheaties this morning. I'm ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah. Chapter 23, an Egwene perspective describing the Jingai Pass as they come to see more and more trees and grass. Egwene noticed that Moraine is keeping close to one of the wagons that was holding some of the spoils found back in Rodion. Egwene kind of wonders at the strange ways of the Aiel. She listens to Rand talking to clan chiefs who are not crazy about the fact that Rand wants them to be respectful of the Cairhienin, who they still think of as tree killers.
Right. Just not letting that go, are they?
Yeah, it's like, hey man, it's been 20 years. You killed the guy.
You killed him. They didn't do it. They didn't tell to cut down the tree. Like, you killed him already.
Right. I think Rand says something like that. He's like, these are not tree killers. So then Egwene hangs back and speaks to Aviendha, who says she doesn't want to sleep in Rand's tent anymore. But before she can even finish the sentence, Soralia, the old wise one, overhears and chastises her for even thinking about defying the wise ones. Aviendha protests that she isn't interested in Rand. And Soralia says, it's a pity since those hips were made for babes.
Hey-o.
And Soralia asks Egwene if she believes Rand would actually hang a clan chief who had defied him, since he had been threatening the clan chiefs about threatening the Cairhienin.
Right.
Egwene says that she's kind of unsure if he actually would, but then Soralia says he should be willing to, so he can show that he's the alpha wolf. Of course, very Aiel, she's thinking, no, he has to assert himself and show that he is the Karn, the chief of chiefs.
Right.
So then she walks off. One last time, Aviendha insists to Egwene how unhappy she is about staying close to Rand. At this point, if you're like not kind of seeing what's going on here, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
You're probably ended up on one of those threads online where they ask you when was some time that you totally missed the signals.
Yeah, and it's like, why is Egwene not getting that so much? I mean, not as obviously. Like, it's just maybe just like it doesn't occur to her. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Chapter 24, Eggie goes to her tent after they've stopped for the evening. She reads a book about great heroes and a whole bunch of romantic stuff in it that she thinks Aviendha likes the book for the romantic stuff, but she won't admit it. She wonders if her last interaction with Nynaeve will continue to change their dynamic, and she goes into Teleon-Riad where she thinks she sees Elaine with Brigitta, but that maybe she's imagining things.
Right.
And then before she can walk up, the wise ones appear and chastise her for entering the world of dreams alone. Then Egwene looks and sees that it's only Elaine. Elaine explains to all of them that some guys in the circus were trying to flirt with Nynaeve, and she got into a fight.
That does sound like Nynaeve, yeah.
Yeah, which is why she's not here, supposedly. Egwene says, if we were back in the tower in our old rooms, I'd give you a piece of my mind as a signal to meet her elsewhere after this meeting. And after they exchange updates, the wise ones say it's time for Egwene to actually sleep. So then we get to chapter 25. Egwene then floats among the dreams.
Yeah, this is such a weird image. Like the stars are like spread out among her, like various people's dreams.
Yeah, like a constellation. Yeah, each dream is like its own star. She can kind of recognize whose dreams they are now. She sees that the wise ones are in fact dreaming already.
Right.
So it's safe to go back into Teleon Rayad. They're not going to catch her. She heads back to the White Tower to their old rooms.
Right. Back to the novice rooms. Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe the accepted rooms, I guess. They briefly maybe, I don't know. I can't remember.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Egwene asks Elaine about Brigitte, and Elaine refuses to say anything other than confirming that it was Brigitte, but she's like, I can't talk about it.
Right.
And Elaine says she doesn't want to talk about Rand, so instead of asking about Rand, she immediately asks about Rand. Right. Egwene says that he's becoming a much more hardened kind of leader, and Elaine says that's good since he's a king and needs to act like one. And Elaine mentions that Nynaeve has actually apologized, and Egwene takes this as evidence that their new dynamic is holding.
Right.
A few other things Egwene says regarding Nynaeve makes Elaine say something to the effect of, well, I see that you're also taking Rand's approach, or something like that, and it irritates Egwene. They go to the Amerlin study and try to read the letters. They find out that Elida has no clue where Rand, or really anybody, is.
Right.
And that she's making plans to build herself a palace in Tar Valon. Because when you are already failing as a leader, what better do than to waste a bunch of resources?
Let them eat cake.
Yeah, exactly. Egwene starts to dream of Galad, but quickly sends herself back to the Two Rivers to escape getting trapped in a dream. And she sees the Wine Spring Inn. She sees the banner of Manetheren and the Wolf Banner. And she begins to dream again that Gawain is there, married to her, and he brings their children and everything. And then she's like, wait, there's something crazy going on here. And so she escapes the dream again.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird, like this like kind of fluidity between dreams. I mean, obviously there's a specific reason in this case, but like this, like how the world of dreams is connected to actual dream.
And I went through the same thing. At first I was even rereading it, I had forgotten the cause of this, and so I was a little bit like, man,
like Egwene, you should not be dealing with this. You're
right, now. And then we get a Moghedien perspective, and we find out that Egwene's dreams were actually her doing, that she was trying to use Egwene to track down Nynaeve.
She sort of did the right thing by escaping back into her own dreams, I guess. I mean,
right, yeah.
I guess Moghedien isn't maybe as good as Lanfear at getting into her dreams. I don't know.
Maybe. It's just a brief note where Moghedien is basically saying she wants to track down Nynaeve. She knows Elaine and Nynaeve are besties, or, well, friends anyway. And so she's wanting to figure out a way to get revenge. It's just clear that Moghedien is obsessed with catching Nynaeve. That's the main takeaway from that.
Maybe she didn't chase after her because she's lazy. I could see Moghedien just being kind of lazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think she may be, I think, like actually the weakest in the power of the Forsaken.
Right.
And so
I can imagine Egwene's probably much more powerful. I mean, obviously Nynaeve was.
Yeah, and so she probably is like knows that if she got caught in that she would be pretty well outmatched. So Chapter 26, a men perspective chapter. Loghain's halo is appearing more and more often, perhaps reflecting that whatever destiny it represents is becoming more and more concrete. Who knows?
Right.
Min has been taking lessons from Lyanna on the art of Damani feminine wiles. Though Min isn't taking it too seriously, as she believes it's a little absurd that Lyanna says that there are 107 different kinds of kisses and 93 ways to touch a man's face with your hand. These are the kinds of things that Damani girls are taught by their mothers.
Right.
Lyanna is flirting with Loghain, but it seems to be either for sport or just to try to keep him alive. Loghain is definitely losing his will to live at this point. They're having to spood feed him, and he's hardly responding. Min wonders where they're going and wonders if Swan even knows, but she seems to have some plan. They arrive in a village that's just suddenly filled with Aes Sedai and orders. A bunch of Aes Sedai are asking Min why they came and brought Loghain. She's like, why are you asking me? I've got Swan Sanche right here. But she realizes that they don't recognize Swan or Liana.
Like, wait a minute. What?
They keep questioning Min after a while. Finally, she says, well, why don't you talk to Swan? Right. Then, of course, they don't believe it's Swan and Liana.
So we have to ask some questions of them.
Yep. Got to grill them of memories only those two could have. This is kind of a fun thing because they go through a bunch of like pranks that they pulled as like novices and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Which would be kind of a funny thing if they had time to leave it in.
Yeah.
Finally, they take Swan and Liana off to talk with them. And Min looks around and sees a few women she recognizes and notes a few different viewings. One of them she sees is going to be collared as a Damani, but then freed later. She's like, well, that's nice at least. It's got to be tough to be Min, like, seeing this stuff, feeling like you can't do anything about it. So chapter 27, Swan and Liana are before the leaders of the rebel Aes Sedai. Swan says that they are rudderless, that they have no plan. And
back to those fishing metaphors.
Exactly. The tower is now in the hands of a fool. And so the Aes Sedai remind them that not only are they no longer the two most powerful women in the tower, they are not even Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And Swan explains that she ran the Blue Ajah's network of eyes and ears, which is more extensive than any other Ajah's
and it should
network.
be said that it is pretty clear they didn't have any idea what they just like kind of gathered there. They don't really have a good plan of what they were going to do. And so like the point is well made, even though they're like disregarding it because it's from a stilled woman.
Right. And yeah, she's completely right. They don't have a plan at this point. They're just kind of hanging out.
All they know is they don't like Elida.
Yeah, pretty much. So after she explains that she ran the Eyes and Ears network for the Blue, then Liana also mentions that she still has some agents in Tarvalin. At this point, it becomes clear that not only are they not wanting to listen to Swan, they expect her to address them as superiors now that she can't wield the power.
Yeah.
This is the first of many, 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 many scenes where we have Aes Sedai politics like this.
Oh man, yeah, this is what makes the slog so bad is this type of stuff. Unfortunately, I'm not saying it's all terrible, but a lot of it's just
a lot of it gets a little, tedious, a little long. It's also a beginning of a trend where we have a room full of characters. And while we might get little bits of information about their personalities from perspective character, like, oh, I remember she used to do this, and I remember her from this, just to give you a little color of what the character is like. We don't really get to know most of them.
Right.
And I'm not sure if we ever even get like an exhaustive list.
Yeah, I mean, there's a list like on the wiki I'm just looking at of like, so Shiriam, Liana, Swan, and then Carlinia, Anaya, Morvrin, Bionin, Marenier, Marel, Erenvar, Newhel, Dromond. And it's like, okay, about half of those I know who they are, and the other half it's like I have no idea.
Well, and also I don't know that it's exhaustive. Like those are the ones that are mentioned.
Sure.
Yeah. At no point does it like go around the room and just say, and like, here,
hi, I'm Bionin. How are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, audience.
Anyway, so at this point, Swan puts her plan into action. We finally get to see why they brought Logain.
Right.
You kind of are at this point, like, why were they so concerned with making sure Logain survives? And Swan tells them that Logain was actually recruited by the Reds to claim that he was the dragon, only for him to be brought down by them. They imply that it was all a plot to bring more power to the Red Ajah. They also imply that the other false dragons could have been put in place by the Reds as well. They actually say something like, well, we're not saying that the Reds actually put the other ones in place at all. We're not saying that.
Right. You draw your own conclusion.
Right. So this ends up, of course, galvanizing the rebel group and setting firm enmity between them and Elida. If there was any question at this point, they're like, it's not even a question. It's, we cannot work with Elida.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting point that she realized that they didn't even consider that she might be lying.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like they just like moved right past that.
Yeah. They don't realize that stilling apparently removes the 3 oaths. It says that would be because few sisters bother studying the effects of stilling.
Right.
And honestly, this always seemed a little weak to me. Like, considering the brown exists entirely to study things.
Wouldn't be that hard to test, obviously.
Right. Yeah, it seems like at some point, somebody would have figured that out.
I guess it's like this unpleasant thing they don't want to talk about. I
guess so, yeah.
But Swan gets what she wanted, and they've agreed to at least let her run the eyes and ears.
Right. That much. And this is when Lyanna suggests that in order to establish themselves as the rightful leadership of the tower, they should create a new hall of the tower, complete with its own sitters, a keeper.
And Amerlin.
Yes. And so, of course, they immediately begin arguing about who should be
the Amerlin. Yeah.
Each Aja saying why it should be someone from their group. The Greys are like, oh, it should be somebody who's a good mediator. And the Whites are like, oh, it should be somebody who's very logical, and on and on. And then Swan suggests, let it be a woman who wasn't in the tower at the time of the schism.
Right. Which makes good sense.
That way she could appear as a neutral party. Lyanna suggests that it'd be someone very strong in the power. So she would be a good symbol to rally behind.
Right.
And in the narration here, we find out that all of this is part of the plan to manipulate the tower towards a certain conclusion. Mm-hmm. We don't know what yet.
We only know that it's designed to keep Swan in power somehow.
It's more or less. Swan thinks that she has a plan to maintain her influence.
Right.
If she can set someone else in power, that she can be the power behind the throne, I guess, so to speak. She's decided that she's worked too long finding Rand to leave it up to anyone else to guide him. Which, in her defense, it's not about the power, it's about the cause. I will say this is a major difference between Swan and a number of the different villains, is that she's not wanting to be the power behind the throne so that she can actually control, to just be in control. She actually wants to make sure that Rand succeeds.
Right.
And she might have some wrong ideas about how to do that, but it's a noble desire at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
They all agree that it would be disastrous if Elida found Rand before they did. So Swan explains that she believes Rand to have vanished to the Aiel Waste. The Aes Sedai don't really believe her, but they say that they should send a green sister or two to go find him. Green because they would have at least 2 warders each to be able to defend themselves.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me with all these eyes and ears. And okay, I realize that the tower is going through the schism, but man, you guys have got to be better informed.
Right. Well, in their defense, like the Aiel Waste thing, at this point, very few people would still know because, of course, he just disappeared from Tyr, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just thinking they have eyes and ears in every town between, here and there. And I get you're right. Fair enough. He did just disappear straight out of Tyr, I suppose. And I guess they wouldn't exactly have eyes and ears in the Waste. So
maybe there would be something by this time coming from the edge of Cairhien, from the Jingai Pass where they've been. So by the end of the conversation, one of them refers to Swan as their mistress of eyes and ears, indicating that, yes, indeed, she's kind of gotten pretty much everything she's wanted out of this conversation.
Right. She's manipulated them exactly as she intended.
So that's when one of the warders comes in and says that a small battalion of men is riding their way from the east. And another warder says that, one of them looked a lot like Gareth Bryn.
Uh-oh, Swan, you're a little monkey rich in your plan there. You forgot about that broken oath, I guess.
Yes, oh snap. So in chapter 28, we get a Gareth Bryn perspective. And he walks into the village, and once again, we get talking about, even if he didn't see the Aes Sedai faces, he would have known that these were all Aes Sedai because of the warders and the way they walked. I just, the whole, the way the warders walk with that dangerous...
wolf-like grace.
Dangerous grace, wolf-like grace. It reminds me a lot of, you probably never watched, the show Leverage?
Mm-mm.
It's worth watching. It's kind of like a little bit like a weekly Ocean's 11 a bit.
Gotcha.
The guy on their team who's the kind of he's the only one who will fight if they need somebody to fight. He's a martial artist. He has this running gag where he will see somebody and say, "Oh, those guys are Brazilian special ops," and they're like, "How do you know?" He's like, "It's because of their stance." And they're like, "You can tell that from the stance," and he always says, "It's a very specific stance."
Right.
I mean, it'll be like, it's a very specific whatever. And that's the way I feel like about everybody that identifies the warders by the way they move. It's like, it's a very specific grace.
Right. It's like, you're just walking down the road, man. I mean, it's probably the cloak, really.
Yeah, I would think the color shifting cloak would give it away. So he walks in and sees these young women that broke their oaths, and he explains what happened to the Aes Sedai, and the Aes Sedai are like, yeah, they totally broke their oaths, and they deserve to serve him, but we're not done with them.
Right.
And so, by the way, this one's Swan Sanche, and this is Lyanna.
He's like, what?
Mind blown emoji right there.
Yeah. He's like, I don't care. They broke their oath.
Right. And then he's kind of like, well, I mean, I'd take Swan as my dog robber, whatever that means.
What?
At this point, because we're in Bryn's head this whole time. And I mean, it is very clear that Bryn is crushing on Swan. I mean, he's hardly denying it at this point in his own mind.
Right.
The women say that they'll let her go with him, and as well as the others, Lyanna and Min, if he agrees to lead an army for them.
Right. Yeah. They're like, wow, you're here and you've already got this going on. Why don't you just do this other thing? No big deal. No big hassle.
Right. Just, lead an army.
Lead an army for us.
But Gareth's mama didn't raise no fool. He has some demands for them. Some of them, he explains that he knows that they're going to plan to attack the tower. He's heard about Elaida. He doesn't like Elaida. He's like, I'm not a fan of her, so I'm cool with that.
I thought she was a bee when she was in Camelin. And
Exactly. He said, but you got to let me run the operation.
Right. You can set the broad scope and what the goals are, but I'm going to handle the nitty gritty.
Don't tell me how to be a general. I won't tell you how to be Tarvalin Witch. He also says, I need you to guarantee that you stay the course. Since if you back out, it would basically mean my men are all going to die. Because even if the White Tower doesn't take care of us, then the other countries eventually would come to back them, and it wouldn't be good for us. And so the Aes Sedai have a little conference. They put on the Cone of Silence weave.
Right.
Then Bryn and Swan have a little verbal sparring session that's just adorable.
Min's like, why did you have to use that oath? Oh my gosh.
Right. This is really the Game of Houses version of a little boy pulling a little girl's pigtails is what it feels like.
Right.
And the little girl tattling is like... So Shiriam Sedai, who, as you mentioned, is one of the ones present, former mistress of novices, who's kind of taken a little bit of the lead, although they're all kind of struggling. She returns to say they accept his conditions, although it's clear from facial expressions that some of them are
not happy about it.
Yeah, more on board than others. Then he vows to serve them as their general until the White Tower is theirs. There's a cool note here where he was already, as he was saying his oath to them, he was already making his plans about where to send the scouts to check out the White Cloak activity in the area and begin to recruit.
Right.
It goes to show you why Gareth Bryn is...
He's Gareth Bryn. He's a great captain. He's in the club.
Right. The whole thing of him joining up with this over Swan is a little bit of like fantasy world logic to me.
Sure, of course. Yeah, it's like, well, I didn't have anything better to do. I was just retired and...
Right.
Sure, I'll lead your army and we'll go take on the White Tower. What?
Yeah. And he even admits, like, this whole affair is going to be very bloody.
It's like, where is the Ta'veren here to make this make more sense? None of you are Ta'veren.
Right. It seems a little out of character for a great captain. Most of the great captains, part of the thing that makes you appreciate them is that they're not one to waste men on, kind of foolish outings. But for whatever reason, he does join up with them. And maybe it's the pattern. Maybe he's wants to prove, that he's still got it in him to fight a war one last time. And maybe it is purely he is just crushing on Swan at this point.
Like, I'll show you I'm still a man. I still can be a great captain.
Towards the end of this chapter, we swap to him in perspective. She sees Bryn come out, and she's sitting with Logain, who looks slightly better, maybe a little bit. Swan walks out and tells her to watch Logain. She's like, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
And Logain talks to her for the first time in days and reveals that he's pretty much figured out who Swan and Lyanna were. The picture of Logain here, even though he's feeling slightly better, is still just a man near death.
Right, just about to give up.
Min is like, well, he's not gonna go anywhere, and nobody wants to talk to him. Right. So, which was Swan's concern, that everybody get their story straight, so that when he gets interrogated by the other sisters, it's like, all that stuff she said was true. So Min goes to speak with Swan. Then Swan turns around and gives her a basket of laundry, because Swan is like, here, this is Gareth Bryn's laundry.
Right.
And you're going to do it. Min realizes, yeah, I'm going to end up doing it all the time, that it's never actually going to be Swan doing laundry.
Right. Swan's going to be busy with Aes Sedai.
Right. And Min says something to herself like, no matter what, when you fall for a man, you end up doing laundry, even if it's not his, or something like that. But anyway, Min explains at this point her most important viewing so far, really, because it has an if in it. And she says that when Bryn and Swan walked out, she saw their aura, that they have to stay close to one another or they'll both die. And so Swan, being Swan, even though she knows Min's viewings are always true, she's just kind of like, okay. And
she's done that before and it has bitten her. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would think she would learn from last time when it was like, yeah, I mean, sometime there's going to be all this craziness where there's a lot, a lot of blood in the tower and all, and she's like, yeah. But what about Rand?
Right.
So Swan's like, yeah, sure. I'm going to die. Whatever. I need to talk with Logain.
Just so focused.
We come down to the end of the chapter there. Did you have any spoilery?
Not a spoiler thing. I just noticed that Gareth Bryn's horse's name is Traveler, which is a better name for a horse generally. It's not great. So that got me thinking. I looked. There are 61 named horses in the Wheel of Time. 61 named horses. That's a lot of horses that have names.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That would be a fun challenge.
How many can you name?
Yeah, Jordan Con or whatever is can you name all 61? Yeah, I don't. I might be able to name 10.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, there's like some of the obvious ones, like the various Taviran horses.
Right. Stepper,
Pips,
yeah. And what's Rand's horse later in the series has a old tongue name?
Jadian or something. I was just looking at that. And then there's Tai'Shar.
Yeah, Tai'Shar was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I had a couple of spoilery notes, so if you don't want to hear spoilers, go ahead and jump off. Join us next week. There's a moment when Elaine and Egwene are talking by themselves, where Elaine just says, "I will be Queen of Andor, and you will be the Amyrlin seat," and she's right on both accounts.
It happens.
Also, I was trying to remember if have we met Morel before any of this?
Know. Yeah,
I mean, she may have been mentioned at some other.
Not as a character with lots of lines or anything important.
Right. And of course, even in this, there's not much of an indication given that she is at all important. But of course, we will find out that she was the one handed Lan's bond.
Right.
Becomes.
Yeah, I always got just in passing, get her confused with Alana.
Yeah, well, I can understand why. Is because
you could see those two characters being merged. That's
actually, that might not be a bad. I could, a Green Sister taking on a lot of warders.
Right.
Morel was one that I would have completely forgotten about, because she's just in that room with all these other women that don't seem all that, which is just it's a common theme, like I say, for the rest of this book. Anyway, and then my last note was, I meant to look this up to double check. At one point, Swan envies the Aes Sedai for not sweating, but in a future book, I think that they kind of backpedal on that and act like
it's like a mental thing.
Yeah,
if you just pretend like you're not cold and ignore the cold, and it's
that it's not a power thing.
It's like a meditation thing or something.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was kind of a change that Jordan made or what that was, but anyway, that was just more an observation of one of those little minor.
That's fair. Yeah.
We always love hearing from our listeners. So visit our website at tsmpodcast.com and fill out our contact form. Say, hey, if you say something nice, maybe we'll give you a shout out on the show.
Heck yeah.
And if you give us feedback, we do take that stuff to heart. We want to provide for you as good a podcast as virtually no money can buy.
Right.
You can also find us on all of the different social medias, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, at Podcast TSM. Stop by, follow us, say hey. Also, wherever you get your podcast, give us a rating and a review. Share us on your social media. Tag us, say hey. We'd be glad to say hey way back. So until next time, Sam.
Tai'Shar Manetheren.